Explore the vibrant arts and culture landscape of Michigan, a state with a thriving creative ecosystem that has birthed iconic movements like Motown and the Purple Rose Theater. Home to legendary musicians, writers, and artists, Michigan boasts a rich tapestry of cultural heritage known worldwide. Michigan Creates is a podcast series that will connect listeners with gifted artists and cultural institutions that are nurturing Michigan's vibrant creative landscape. Welcome to Michigan Creates. I'm your host, Ara Topouzian, and today I have a special guest that I'm looking forward to interviewing. His name is Jeff Karoub, and with a career spanning journalism, writing, and advocacy, Jeff has carved a unique path telling stories that resonate deeply with audiences far and wide. Join us as we dive into Jeff's journey from his early days in navigating the newsrooms of Detroit to his current endeavors championing the arts and culture scene here in Michigan. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation that I have with Jeff Karoub. Jeff, this is great to talk to you, and I appreciate you coming on my program, Michigan Creates. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Ara. Great to be here.
Yeah, you and I have a bit of a similar, I think, background in what we do to a certain degree, and you and I are the same age, and so I think we've gone through some of the same experiences. Certainly today, I'm talking to you because you're an artist. You're here in Michigan. You create music, hence the name Michigan Creates. So it's going to be really fun to talk to you. I want to go back. This is your life, right? But I want to go back into your history of your background, sort of growing up. When did you start to maybe appreciate music?
Well, it must have been before January 8th, 1969 at 5:45 a.m.
Wow, you remember that, huh?
It was a good day. It was a good day. Elvis Presley, David Bowie, and I were all born the same day. I have slightly less fame and talent, but I'm working on it. Having a father who is still with us at 93, but having a father who played in the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, played on Motown records back in the 60s and early 70s before they decamped to Southern California. It's part of my life. I found this quote from Joe Henry. I want to just take a moment and share with you. So he's a singer-songwriter who happens to have been at least raised a bit in Michigan, if not born here. He said, "I accepted music in my atmosphere the way I accepted salt on the table. I didn't know where it came from, but I used it liberally." And I think that is just the story of my life. It was there before I was born. It's been there just about every minute, certainly every day of my 55 years on the planet. It's just been there like salt on the table.
That's a great quote. By the way, going back for a second, I mean, that's nice that you can attribute your birth date to Elvis Presley. Mine is Ted Knight. So Caddyshack is about my claim to fame, I guess. We share the same birthday of Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th. But yeah, I don't have this.
Yeah, it lives in infamy for other reasons, but we like that it's your birthday and Ted Knight. Yeah, of Caddyshack fame. And
yeah, I mean, it's, could be worse, right? Definitely could
absolutely
be worse. So your father was musically inclined, and it was all around you, and about siblings, cousins, there's some others in the family that play music as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I'm the youngest of three. My brother, Mike, is a phenomenal jazz cellist.
Yes.
Who plays around. People have heard of the Royal Garden Trio in the Detroit area. He's played with a lot of groups, Jim DePogny's Chicago Jazz Band. If you go back, they found themselves on National Public Radio, on Garrison Keillor, shows like that. So I have my older brother, and my older sister, who's a music teacher in Ohio and on the adjunct faculty at Ohio University. So they're both have been very involved in music from the get-go too. So it surrounded me. I tried sports, but when I was in ninth grade, it was between making a commitment to marching band or a commitment to cross country. And my coach said, "It's about choices, Jeff." And I said, "Okay, I think I've made my choice." And I went with marching band. So yeah, it's definitely been, in my house everywhere. And then of course I gravitated to friends who were in music.
Yeah.
Naturally, when you're in ensembles, and you're going through that stuff, you make friends, and some of my closest friends in life are fellow musicians.
Yeah, there's a special bond I think that we all have and a connection certainly as musicians. It's interesting. I did marching band as well. I played cornet. The difference is maybe you enjoyed it perhaps. I didn't really ever enjoy playing music throughout school. What was the instrument you played in marching band? And was that your first instrument that you touched?
First instrument was violin,
Okay.
and that was I don't even remember starting. I was about 3 or 4. I played. There was a Detroit Community Music School in the Cass Corridor, now Midtown,
Yeah.
uh, and I started there. And then after a little while, I went to take private lessons from a woman who was in the Michigan Opera Theater in the orchestra, and she was in the Dearborn Symphony. And I took lessons from her till I think 18. But there was no strings program in Allen Park where I went to school at that time. So I
Right.
picked up the alto sax, the
Mm,
alto saxophone in 5th grade. And that kind of became my meal ticket, so to speak, in school. And that's what I played on through high school, college, Michigan State, Spartan Marching Band, which, by the way, something that another great benefit of music is it got me to watch football because we weren't a big like sports on TV house except for the Tigers
right.
growing up. And so I got to understand a little bit about football. I had a team to root for, right? A rooting interest is kind of what you're looking for
Right.
in life. So I got to, I mean, they're not University of Michigan, I know, but Michigan State, gotta love them. And they've had moments of greatness, and I hope they'll have them
Yeah.
again. So I got to go to the Rose Bowl as a freshman at Michigan State back in
Wow.
1988. The saxophone took me far, right? I can always say I played a gig, I sold out the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
It's one of my lines. So
Hey, MSU marching band is nothing to sneeze at. It's a very good marching band. It's always been a great marching band. I have a cousin that played that performed in that group years ago, and so that's great. So you really did have that career in
I
playing
did.
music.
And
So
I know that if my friends are watching this and they say, wait a minute, did you just say the University of Michigan band is better than the Spartan band? I meant the team
yes,
is consistently better. But the band, we always say the band always wins, right? And if you're there to root for the Michigan marching band, they're going to win. If you're there to root for the Michigan State marching band, they're going to win. And I have a
right.
daughter who was in the Michigan State marching band,
No,
just graduated a couple of years ago. So it lives on in my kids too, which I might be jumping the gun in that conversation, but
well, no, I think that's okay. I think that that's important that you're kind of keeping tradition alive and that they're interested in music. So you did certainly something right.
if
So
nothing else.
after MSU musically, what were you into?
Well, the great thing about that's a good demarcation point because
Yeah,
even though I'd picked up friends' guitars before, I
yeah,
never owned one until after I graduated college. And it was at that time where I said, okay, I've been classically trained on the violin. I've been trained in the concert and marching band settings with the alto sax. I even played some bassoon in middle school and high school, but I've never, sort of done it myself.
hmm,
I've taken lessons. I've learned, I've been under the baton of various directors, went to Interlochen and Blue Lake and all that stuff on violin and saxophone. And so I said, right or wrong, I want to do it myself. I
hmm,
want to learn, if I learn a lot of bad habits, well, I only will have myself to blame for that. So I bought a cheap guitar. I played guitar with a friend of mine going back. We've been friends since middle school. He went to a different college. We came together in the Detroit area after college, after graduation from college. And we started playing as just writing songs, early stabs at songwriting, and got ourselves some coffee house gigs. So
hmm,
for me, that was sort of the beginning of, Jeff Karoub, singer songwriter, was
yeah.
then. I tried writing songs earlier, but that's when it really started to stick.
And what
Uh,
was your style? What were you writing then? I'm gonna assume it's similar to what you're doing now, a little
it
bit,
is.
but yeah,
It is. I always thought that I was a little too pop for folk and a little too folk for pop. It's kind of hard because you've got your sort of hardcore people who are still gnashing their teeth and, wringing their hands over Dylan going electric at, what was it, which festival that was. They can
Right.
tell you the date and the place and the time. So I guess I kind of feel like I said before about, being like salt and using it liberally. I I don't feel like I can be pinned down to too much of a style because even though it probably leans toward a folk rock or a folk pop or a roots folk, we
Yeah.
like the word Americana these days.
Yep.
But I'm bringing influences, right? I'm bringing some classical influences. I'm bringing some, I hear chords and I hear other instruments in my head from all my days playing in orchestras and bands. And then, of course, with Middle Eastern roots, and I know we share Middle
Yep.
Eastern roots. I know that that's probably seeping in, even though I don't think you listen to my music and say, well, there's a half Lebanese guy right there. I can totally tell. But it's, I'm just I feel like I'm an amalgam of all these
Yep.
things. If I had to narrow it down, I kind of like roots folk or I'll say rhythm and roots folk sometimes because I feel like I'm bringing in some of that R&B from growing up in Motown, roots for, putting down my roots here as well as, the folk tradition.
So are you performing mainly your own work? Are you doing cover work as well, or is it mainly your own compositions?
Well, I made a decision, and I think for everyone, this is a different decision and there's no wrong answers. But for me, I decided that, well, I have songwriting heroes,
Hmm.
people like the Beatles and Neil Finn of Crowded House, and I could go on, David Bowie, other people,
Right.
and all the greats at Motown like Smokey Robinson and Marvin Gaye. I decided that, since I don't have to play music to pay my mortgage, I have a day job. We can talk about that. I wanted to make a choice that if it meant playing fewer gigs, I'd like to do mostly, if not entirely, originals. And if I do a
Yeah.
cover song, it's to pay homage, right? It's to say, I want to play a song that rearranged my DNA, right?
Right.
Something like that. And so I'll play songs by like those aforementioned artists. So to answer your question, I do prefer and look for opportunities to play original music, if not entirely, then mostly. And so playing, coffee houses, playing community theaters, small theaters, playing festivals and summer concert series where they want me to play my own music, they like my music. That's a blessing right there.
I always had a special spot for folks that would just play original music because I do think there is something really different about that, enjoyable. Hey, if I want to listen to Motown, I can listen to it online, but there is something special about hearing a musician's own work and own their own compositions. And certainly, it comes from a certain place and so forth. You touched on, the day job. And so let's talk about that because I think there's certainly a connection between your compositions and your career. So let's talk a little bit about what your day job and background to put food on the table, I guess, if you will,
That's right.
is.
Well, so for me, I always felt like I was toggling back and forth. I had thoughts about majoring in music, whether it be music performance or music education. But I had this sort of fascination, this passion for journalism and writing, like starting a family newspaper and then starting a zine in middle school with a friend of mine, and being on the high school newspaper staff. So I was, that was something, the other side of my life where I was constantly looking for opportunities to tell stories,
Right.
write stories, talk to people, interview people. So I made a choice. There was an opportunity to major in music, and maybe it would come with a very big scholarship. And I like to joke to my parents. I said, "Didn't you like it when I chose the no ride scholarship to Michigan State? You paid full freight for me to be a journalist." But it's worked out incredibly well. I did major in journalism, and I worked for almost 30 years in traditional journalism, kind of moving up the ranks. It used to be anyway. Started a I started a suburban Detroit weekly. I went to a small daily, then a mid-market. We call it, that's a little jargon there, like,
Yep.
sort of middle market paper. And then I was working for a business publication. People in Detroit will know Crane's Detroit Business. I worked for a startup media back in the early 2000s when everyone wanted to work for a startup. But journalists don't know what they're doing in startups, right? Journalism in startups is a different conversation we can talk about later.
Yes.
And then I ended up at the Associated Press, and I was writing for the World on a good day
Yeah.
from my backyard, from the Detroit bureau of the AP. So that there was that rise. And then I turned 50 and I'd been at it for almost 30 years. And I said, I still want to write. I still love talking to smart people, but I need a little more sanity. I need a little more predictability.
Yeah.
And so I went to go, I'm doing similar to what I used to do for the University of Michigan. I'm a writer, I'm a public relations representative now, but a lot of my time is spent talking to faculty and writing about, sharing, and promoting their work, whether it's a business professor or it's someone who's on the faculty at the Ford School of Public Policy, or the economics department. And so I'm talking to people that I did talk to when I was a journalist, only now I'm doing it for the University of Michigan.
Taking the journalist route is not an easy one. That was my undergrad degree as well. And again, I say we're the same age, and so you remember. So for me, I graduated from Wayne State, and when I graduated, the advice that was given to me was when I'd say, "Hey, where can I go work? I want to write, and I could be a journalist." And I was told, "Yeah, get another degree, get another job." Like, don't stay in journalism. So it wasn't easy. And so you did make a very good career out of it. But here's what I want to ask you, Jeff. How does that play off with the music? Because I think there is such a similarity and cohesiveness between written word and music. But how were you able to utilize that? I mean, certainly I would assume the compositions, writing your music and whatnot is sort of is the similar or maybe the obvious answer. But how would you draw the similarities between both of those styles of
Well,
creativity?
you've heard the old expression that talking about music is like dancing about architecture.
Yeah,
It's really hard to critically analyze the creative process, but I like that we're giving it a go. I know I can't separate my upbringing and my DNA and all of that. So I know that even though I wanted to build these walls and say, this is my journalism life and this is my off hours, my music life, I know it wasn't so simple or so discrete. I know that one was bleeding into the other.
right.
I know that, like, for instance, the day that an editor told me, boy, this lead on your story, that's the first sentence. It's musical. There's like a cadence. There's kind of
Yeah,
a beat to it. And I wasn't purposely doing that. It wasn't like shooby dooby doo. I'm writing, I'm writing a lead. And so I knew that I couldn't avoid it at times. And so I think that when it comes to the cadence of words, the way you read them, people have said that I talk in a little bit of a musical way. So I know some of it is, there's no trying, right? It's not intentional. It's just the way I
right.
am built. And I know when it comes to composing the music side, well, maybe I can't make such an obvious analog, but the word side, absolutely, right? And maybe because I spent so long in journalism and we thought of the inverted pyramid, maybe that's why I'm not as much into experimental music, right? Maybe
Mm,
that's why I like there to be some structure. I love some freedom within the structure, right?
yeah,
I love to be able to, sing that a little bit differently or make that go to a place that people either aren't expecting, or if I'm going where they're expecting, um, I want to do it in some sort of, I want to try to be a little less derivative. I want to try to be a little bit more original. So I
right.
think I think it works its way in, and every so
Yeah.
often I take the reporting approach to songwriting. I think about, what do I need to know? What do
Mm,
I need to read? Or I read a story and it inspires a song. I have a song on my latest album called Little Bird. And Little Bird was inspired by a story I read in the New York Times about this endangered songbird species that had forgotten its mating call. And you know that if you forget your mating call, you're
yeah,
probably, you don't have much longer for this world as a species. It's
right.
sort of incumbent upon the species to mate, to survive. So Yeah, in lots of ways, in lots of little ways, and probably in big ways, I'm not always sure of.
Yeah, that's a very interesting roadmap. And I wanted to ask you about, how do you create and the inspirations, and you've talked about some of it. Um, but as you're putting original music together, I mean, it's not, again, it's not something that I can do. So I have a hard time, I can't just sit down. I thought, years ago, anybody could compose music. It's a simple thing. And it isn't. It isn't a simple thing. And I think you have to have some real special talents, I think, to do that. Instead of me just saying, "What inspires you, Jeff, to create original music?" What type of, like, what road do you go down? I mean, is it all across the map as far as, not genre? We already talked about roots and folk, but I mean, subject wise, I think that's where I would get really stuck. Is if you talk about birds, then I would write about birds and squirrels and rabbits and deers, and then I think I would get stuck in this path. What do you have specific paths that you think about as you're creating original work?
Well, I appreciate you saying that it takes a talent. I think any songwriter, most songwriters would tell you that while they don't want to deny that they had some hand in it, there's some really great words on songwriting and the creative process by Jeff Tweedy. If anybody's interested, he's in the band Wilco, and I read him and I say, wow, I feel like he's reading my mind in
Yeah,
terms of the ways I think about music and the ways I approach it. I really want there to be, I want to create a thin space. I don't want to make it so. I want to make it so if someone listening to me thinks I could do that. Now they might think I could do it better, and that's all right if they think that, right? But I want them to listen and say, hey, I want music to be, I want to bring people closer in. I want to convene, I want to connect with people, not just when I'm playing music because I like to play for an audience. It's so much better to have
yeah,
people listening to you, but because I want people to go try it themselves. If they've got an instrument at home they haven't played, like a cornet or a guitar that was gifted to them by an uncle, I want them to play. So there isn't any one tried and true way.
right.
Sometimes if I'm feeling stuck with the guitar, like it isn't, my antenna's up, but I'm not receiving, I'll go to the mandolin or I'll sit at the piano. And even though I'm not a great piano player, I can bang out chords.
Yeah,
I'm probably not fingering them correctly on the keyboard, but I can play chords. So sometimes something just sort of drops in. I'll be playing a series of chords or a couple chords, and something will sneak in, a lyric or a melody. But also, and I've known other songwriters to do this, if they get a good idea, but it isn't a whole song, or even if it is a whole song, that's beautiful, but rare for me.
right.
Sometimes some words will come to me on a walk or in the shower, or strangely, when listening to something else. It's almost like something will come in the back door of the speakers and say, "Hey, here's something. Here's a line that isn't in this song, but for some reason this song is inspiring my brain." And I have the notes on my phone. I have lots of lyrics, and oftentimes, I'll go back to them.
Yeah.
So even though people say what comes first, I can't always say words, but I guess because I've made a living of words or through words, um, the words probably come a majority of the time, but not
Yeah.
always before the music.
Probably
So
more probably more natural for you, like you said, given your upbringing and work that you were doing. So that makes a lot of sense.
right, and to your earlier question, maybe that's where some of the journalism
Yeah.
training comes in, because if I write some words, it's as if I did some prior reporting, and now I've got to make it sing. In the case of journalism, it's to make it sing figuratively. In the case of a song, it's to make it sing literally. Okay, the writing's great, or the reporting was fine. Now I've got to do the writing.
Right.
It's a writing job. And so when I put those words to a song, inevitably, maybe 99 times out of 100, it's going to involve at least a little surgery. It's not going to just drop in whole cloth, right? So maybe I'm bringing some of my writing skills to task and saying, well, I've used that same word twice or three times. Got to find a different word. or this really doesn't fit. What's a two-syllabled word instead of a four-syllabled word for the same thing?
Right.
Or I look at it later and I say, well, what the hell was I thinking? What was I on when I wrote that?
But that's my point, is that you've got the ability to really use your practices from both to make them work together. Hey, now you can use like Chat GPT, right? If you miss a phrase. I'm not suggesting you do that, but certainly that's where we've kind of evolved. Jeff, you've talked about some of the different instruments. I want to make sure I grab all of what you play, because I think you're pretty modest with a lot of this. Certainly guitar, and I think we see and hear you play guitar. You mentioned violin, you mentioned alto sax, you've mentioned mandolin, piano. Am I missing anything else, or did we get them all?
Well, that's everything that I would be comfortable playing for a paying audience.
Right.
I I did play some bassoon. I haven't picked one of those up since high school. And I also, have picked up my daughter's ukuleles, but for some reason, again, someone could show me, I could spend some serious time
Yeah.
learning the chords, but that's not an instrument that I feel comfortable on. It's not an instrument that came to me as quickly or as naturally. And so I think you've covered everything that I
Yeah, I think
play
so.
reasonably okay.
That's
Yeah.
terrific. And so where do you play? So you mentioned some coffee houses. I mean, where do you have a favorite type of a venue?
I have a couple in mind when you say that. One of them, and it feels like a plug, but it really is truly, I get nothing for saying it, except for the joy of mentioning it. There's a nonprofit theater in Livonia called Trinity House Theater.
Yeah.
I think it fits about 75 or 80 people max. I'm not exactly sure, but somewhere around that number. And so when I say I've sold out the Trinity House Theater, you can have in the back of your mind, Jeff, that's like 75 people. Good job.
Hey, go with it. Go with
But
it.
it's a beautiful theater. It's
Yes.
volunteer led and
Yeah.
run. They have volunteers doing sound, volunteers doing lights, volunteers working the snack concession area. It's volunteers up and down the way. And so I feel very fortunate that this place, which brings in regional and even national acts, will open their doors to local folks too, like me and lots of other people. So that's one of my favorites for sure. There's places across the country. I haven't played a lot of them. I've done most of my performing in the Midwest, a
Mhm.
little bit in New York State, and then strangely Finland, which is a different story altogether. But I know there are places like in Chicago, there's the Two-Way Street Coffee House. It's in a church, and that's something that our artists will play traveling across the country. So I've been fortunate to play a lot of intimate rooms, intimate spaces.
Yeah.
The Dearborn Public Library, I've played on the stage at their main library, the Henry Ford Centennial. I've played 8 or 9 times now at a summer concert series in Dearborn at the Dearborn Episcopal.
And
Uh,
these are really the kinds of venues you like, right? I mean,
I really do.
it fits the type of music you're doing, and I understand that. I think a lot of folks think that I play for a predominant, Armenian audience for the music that I play. And I play a lot of non-Armenian, and a lot of the types of venues that you talk about are certainly I can identify with that and enjoy. CDs, recordings, albums. I don't know what are everybody calling it, streaming these days, but you've recorded. And how many recordings have you done to date?
So the one I released last year is my fifth solo album.
Yep.
I did a couple of albums with the pop duo. We
Hmm.
called ourselves Jar. And I've done some just so sometimes I do things that I only put on SoundCloud. I don't mean to diminish it, but I didn't go through a professional recording process. I might have used GarageBand or a couple of apps to record me. But the stuff that I've gone and had professionals help me engineer, help me mix and master
Yeah.
and co-produce. There's 5 of those under my name. I've done some recording with a band called Garrison Corner. These are some guys that I met through church. There's a great guitarist named George Lucky and a drummer named Dan Houston, and so we've done some recording. During COVID, George learned a little bit about audio engineering and has a board and did some recording. we wore masks when we gathered, and we kept our distance and everything. But, or we just like, go into the room and he'd say, okay, I hit record, just go in there and play. So yeah, that's a longer answer than you wanted, but five CDs, under the Jeff Karoub banner since 2012, I think was
Okay.
the debut solo album.
Great. And folks can go online you got to give a plug for your website.
Yeah, jeffkaroub.com. But
Okay.
these days, everyone has, I think, a favorite streaming service. So
Yeah.
people can go to Spotify, they can go to Amazon or Google or Apple Music, I think is what we're calling it now, iTunes/Apple
Yeah.
Music, Deezer. There's some that I haven't even,
Well, there's too many of them there's
yeah,
probably too many to mention, but you're right. Just the streaming services and just type
right.
in your name.
And Ara, I think you'd say the same thing if
Yeah.
you have recordings. I want people to find me wherever they can find me. And I know if people are listening to me in Europe or Asia, elsewhere in the world, I have to thank Spotify for that, right? But I also
Yeah.
know that as far as they don't put the artist first in terms of revenue sharing, and that's a whole different conversation. So I guess I say, I'll take you wherever you find me. But if you do like what you hear, you can go to Bandcamp and you can download the latest album for $7 or more. They say $7 or more, and people
Or
have
more.
paid more for it. They've paid more for it. So
Well,
some people are like, I want my music free, and other folks are saying, or someone comes to my gig and they buy the physical CD. I had someone say, I don't even have a working CD player, but I want to have your CD. Is there a greater compliment than that?
no.
That's
Well,
one of the
here,
best.
I'll give you a line that you can use. So when I do gigs and I do take some CDs with me, and now, no one's really buying them a lot. And sometimes I just give them away. I just say, look, it doubles as a drink coaster. So you can't go wrong. So you can use that, and I won't
Right.
charge any royalties. I'm sure I
I
stole
like
that
that.
from
Right.
somebody else.
Well, and well,
Well,
I appreciate you, you know, you, like you said at the top, we understand each other in a lot of ways,
yeah,
right? Gen X, roughly the same age, had a same major in college. But really to me, it's like when someone wants to play music and it isn't about trying to make the bank. It's about
yeah.
just sharing what they've learned and do and enjoy. And man, to me, I've hit the sweet spot if I found people who are picking up what I'm laying down creatively. In the state where I was born, I mean, sure, I'd love to go on a national tour. But to me, most of my gigging is in the state where I was born.
Yeah.
Born in the shadow of Motown, and it means so much to do it here.
Well, we're glad that we have you here. And while I have you here, we want to hear some of your music. So will
Great.
you sing and play some guitar for us?
I'm gonna do a song called "Good Things A Comin'," because isn't that always what we hope for?
It is.
Though I make bold predictions, they often come out wrong. But this hunch I've got brewing is building up so strong. I feel good things are coming, shouldn't be too long now. I can't say exactly when, I can't see exactly how. I've got a friend who's a singer, says his hope is in its prime. I have received sonic wisdom, optimism right on time. I feel good things are coming, shouldn't be too long now. I can't say exactly when, I can't see exactly how. I'll make a vow with conviction so they hear me in the back. If good things aren't a coming, I'll go get them and bring them back. Yeah, I'll go get them and bring them back. I feel good things are coming, shouldn't be too long now. I can't say exactly when, I can't see exactly how. I feel good, things are coming, shouldn't be too long now. I can't say exactly when, I can't see exactly how. Mm-hmm. Oh, whoa, 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 oh,
Awesome, Jeff.
Thank you.
That is a very upbeat song. You could play that just about any time of the year, can't you?
That's right. I hope that we always hope, right? We always have the optimism that good things are coming.
Yeah.
I love to either sometimes I'll start or end a gig with that. So I'm glad it works.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate it. And on that note, I think we've kind of run out of time, but it's been wonderful talking to you. And I really enjoy your music, and we wish you certainly the best of luck. And again, thanks for coming on today's program.
Thank you, Ara, and thanks for this podcast. It's a treasure, and I look forward to hearing all the episodes that are coming.
Great, thank you.